The Arbiter, a towering Vondarian with translucent skin, revealing a complex network of pulsing blue veins, struck his crystalline staff against the floor 3 times. The sound resonated with perfect acoustics throughout the chamber. Ambassador Vasiliv of Terra, he intoned, each syllable deliberately pronounced as if the words themselves were distasteful. You may present your petition for full assembly recognition. Elena nodded respectfully, though her eyes remained sharp and alert. Behind her, the small human delegation, just 4 specialists chosen for their expertise rather than diplomatic rank, arranged their equipment with practiced efficiency. Before I begin, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly despite the translator's attempts to soften her tone, I would like to address the environmental settings in this chamber. The Arbiter's inner veins flashed purple, annoyance visible through his transparent flesh. The settings are calibrated for the comfort of all representatives. All established representatives, Elena corrected. She retrieved a small device from her pocket and held it up. This atmospheric analyzer indicates oxygen levels 17% below human optimal and gravity set at 1.2 Earth standard. Both settings differ from those recorded in the Assembly's own accommodation guidelines for human physiology. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such a direct challenge to the Arbiter's authority was unprecedented from a petitioning species. An oversight, the Arbiter conceded, making a gesture. The subtle pressure on Elena's chest eased as environmental fields recalibrated. Thank you, she said, knowing she'd scored her first small victory. The assembly operated through layered subtleties, environmental conditions designed to fatigue, translation systems programmed to diminish, seating arrangements calculated to intimidate. Every disadvantage was plausibly deniable, every prejudice hidden behind protocol. She activated her presentation console. The holographic display remained dark. Your system appears incompatible with our technology, observed a Mariotian counselor. Mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive smirk. Actually, Elena replied, your system is attempting to access and classify my presentation before displaying it. Standard procedure for censoring uncomfortable information. She withdrew a secondary device from her case and connected it to the console. The security protocols abruptly disengaged as her override took effect. Impossible, hissed a Gardner representative, speaking directly for the first time. Our security was designed 63 years ago. Elena completed his sentence. Innovative for its time, certainly. The implications hung in the air. Humans had not only understood assembly technology, but had surpassed it. The chamber's artificial lighting dimmed momentarily as Elena's presentation fully integrated with the system, bypassing restrictions meant to limit petitioning species to pre-approved content. Distinguished representatives, Elena began formally, her polished diplomatic tone returning. I come before you not merely to present Earth's case for recognition, but to address a more fundamental concern. The display behind her illuminated, showing not Earth's achievements as expected, but the Assembly's own insignia, the ancient symbol of unified species throughout the galaxy. Elena paused, allowing tension to build as she surveyed the chamber. For 3 cycles, we have attempted conversation through conventional channels. Today, we will speak truth to power. She pressed a control, and the insignia fractured into pieces, reforming into a pattern that caused several elder representatives to rise in alarm. It was the classified mapping of assembly power structures, information no outside species should possess. Let us begin, said Elena, with what you have been hiding. Security drones deployed from recessed ceiling compartments, hovering with weapons trained on the human delegation. The Arbiter's voice cut through the chaos. You have violated Assembly Directive 7 Alpha. This is grounds for immediate expulsion and sanctions against your world. Elena maintained her composure as the chamber erupted in overlapping voices. She caught the eye of Dr. Sanjay Mehta, her xenohistorian, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. They had anticipated this reaction. Directive 7 Alpha, Elena repeated clearly. which prohibits unauthorized access to classified information. A directive created by the Gardner Council, not the full Assembly, and never properly ratified according to Article 3 of the Assembly Charter. She gestured toward her data specialist, who activated a second set of files. The display split into multiple sections showing the legal history of Assembly governance structures. Several sections were highlighted in red, procedural violations stretching back millennia. These files were not stolen, Elena continued, her voice cutting through the noise. They were provided by conscience-driven members of your own administrative divisions. This revelation sent a new wave of shock through the chamber. The concept of internal dissent within the carefully controlled Assembly bureaucracy seemed impossible to many representatives. A proxy diplomats, representing a younger species with only 3 centuries of Assembly membership, rose from her chair, compound eyes fixed on the human. Ambassador, if what you claim is true about Operation Gentle Hand, my species' restricted access to dimensional physics, supposedly for our own safety, is actually meant to prevent you from developing technology that might challenge established power structures, Elena confirmed. Your species' intuitive understanding of dimensional boundaries was deemed potentially destabilizing in Assessment Report TC 985. The proxy diplomat's wings vibrated in agitation as she turned to the Gardner representatives. We have lost generations of potential progress. Elena advanced her presentation as more representatives began examining the data packets her team had distributed. The next file showed a comparative analysis of technological development rates across 100 civilizations, all artificially constrained to follow nearly identical patterns. The Assembly presents itself as a guardian of developing species, Elena said, protecting them from the dangers of unchecked advancement. In reality, it functions as a system of technological apartheid. The arbiter struck his staff again, trying to restore order, but his authority was visibly crumbling as representatives from mid-tier civilizations abandoned decorum to confront Gardner members directly. A holographic alert appeared at Elena's console. A security override was being attempted from the Assembly's central systems. She nodded to her cybersecurity expert, who had already prepared countermeasures. The attempted shutdown failed spectacularly, instead triggering Elena's next prepared revelation. The chamber's main display shifted to security footage from within the Assembly's most restricted zone, the Historical Continuity Department. The timestamp showed the recording was just 7 days old. In it, Assembly archivists systematically destroyed records of extinct civilizations, replacing them with sanitized versions. This department, Elena explained, doesn't preserve history, it rewrites it. The true record of your interventions would fill volumes. We've only scratched the surface. The Danubian representative, a gelatinous being who rarely spoke at Assembly gatherings, extended a pseudopod toward Elena. How did humans discover all this? Our civilization is 3 times older than yours, yet we suspected nothing. Elena smiled, but it held no warmth. Perhaps because we were never taught to stop asking questions. The Draconid elder who had spoken in the recorded Gardner session rose slowly from his seat. Unlike the other panicking representatives, he moved with deliberate calm. His scaled form towered over most species, ancestral membranes flaring along his spine, an involuntary sign of rage in his kind. Humans, he hissed, voice modulated to carry without the translator. Mistake access for understanding. You've stumbled upon fragments and constructed a narrative that serves your ambitions. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Few humans could maintain eye contact with a Draconid elder. Their compound pupils created a disorienting effect evolved specifically to intimidate prey species. Perhaps you prefer to explain the contingency protocols yourself, Elder Zach Skrill. Elena suggested. Particularly Protocol Twilight, designed for the gentle reduction of civilizations deemed too innovative. The elder's inner eyelids flickered, surprised that she knew his name, shocked that she knew of Protocol Twilight. His recovery was swift but noticeable to those watching closely. Stability requires sacrifice, he stated. A galaxy survived the fracture wars only through careful management of technological proliferation. Would you return us to an age when a single species could develop weapons capable of stellar extinction? Elena nodded to her team's anthropologist, who projected a new file. It showed the complete historical record of officially recognized interstellar conflicts, spanning 50,000 years of assembly history. 27 significant conflicts, Elena noted, all but 3 occurring within the first millennium of assembly governance. An impressive record of peace. The elder relaxed slightly, sensing a concession. Until, Elena continued, we examined the classified definition of conflict. The display changed to show internal assembly security directives. The definition was highlighted. Conflict. Military action between 2 or more recognized assembly member species. Note: peacekeeping operations against non-compliant civilizations are categorized as stability enforcement and are not included in conflict metrics. A wave of unease passed through the chamber as Elena displayed the complete record. Over 700 stability enforcement operations, averaging 1 every 72 years. The casualty figures were staggering. This isn't peace, Elena stated flatly. It's imperial pacification disguised as benevolence. Young Kolvashi representatives, a species admitted to the assembly barely 50 years ago, broke diplomatic protocol entirely, abandoning their assigned seating to cluster around the human delegation's data terminals. Their trembling appendages interfaced directly with Elena's systems, assimilating information at speeds impossible for organic brains. Truth verification complete, the Kolvashi hive mind announced, their collective voice resonating. Data authentic. Probability of fabrication negligible. Elder Zax Krill's membranes fully extended now, a threat display rarely seen in diplomatic settings. You risk everything we've built, he warned, addressing the entire chamber rather than just Elena. Carefully managed progress has lifted countless species from planetary confinement to interstellar civilization. At what cost? Challenged Elena. The gardeners speak of management, but practice suppression. You've built a galaxy trapped in technological amber, allowed to advance only when it serves your interests. She approached the central platform, a breach of protocol that caused security drones to power up again. The Arbiter, now clearly uncertain of his authority, made no move to stop her. The Assembly votes regularly on technological restrictions, Elena continued. But the true questions are never asked. Who decides which technologies are restricted? Based on what criteria? For whose benefit? She gestured to the display where the gardener's private directives were highlighted, showing the answer to each question. The gardeners decide, based on threat to established power. For their benefit alone. The memorial display of extinct species cast the assembly chamber in a ghostly blue light. Representatives stared in stunned silence at civilizations erased not just physically but from memory itself. The scrolling names seemed endless, each accompanied by images of remarkable achievements now lost to the universe. A senior Phasmodian representative, whose species had served on the Assembly's Ethics Committee for millennia, approached the human delegation. His translucent form shimmered with internal light patterns indicating extreme distress. These claims require verification, he insisted, voice like settling crystal. The Assembly has strict preservation protocols for all known extinct sapient species. Elena nodded to Dr. Mehta, who stepped forward with a physical artifact, something rare in an age of digital evidence. He carefully unwrapped a crystalline tablet, its surface etched with spiral writing. This is a navigational beacon from the Itheri, Dr. Mehta explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. Recovered from ruins in what you call Restricted Sector 17B. The dating is conclusive. They were an active, spacefaring civilization 3,000 years after their supposed natural extinction. The Phasmodians' patterns froze momentarily, the equivalent of aghast. His appendage reached toward the artifact, but stopped short of touching it. The mineral composition is unique to the Itheri homeworld, Dr. Mehta continued. We have hundreds more artifacts from supposedly extinct civilizations, all found in sectors declared restricted for natural hazards or ongoing stellar instability. The chamber's automated translation system struggled to keep pace with the overlapping conversations as representatives debated the implications. Elena allowed this moment of processing before she played her most devastating evidence. The haunting multi-tone voices of the Nulari filled the chamber. Their final transmission had been recovered from a derelict communications relay at the edge of their home system. This is Cultural Arction Talasi broadcasting on all frequencies. The assembly ships have penetrated our defenses. They claim we violated Protocol 5, but we only wish to heal our sun. The gravitational technology was developed to save billions of lives. Please, anyone receiving this, remember us. Remember that we chose knowledge over obedience. The recording continued with sounds of orbital bombardment, the terrified coordination of planetary defenses, and finally silence. Elena let the recording play to its end, a recording the assembly had believed completely destroyed. A representative from the Voshani, a species known for their emotional detachment, was visibly weeping, secreting grief pheromones that affected nearby empathic species. The chain reaction of emotional response spread through the chamber. Humanity developed antimatter containment technology 30 years ago, Elena stated into the silence that followed. A technology classified as existentially dangerous under Assembly Protocol 5, the same protocol the Nulari supposedly violated. The implications were unmistakable. Several representatives glanced toward Earth's delegation with new understanding and fear. This is why the human delegation's security clearance was questioned, Elena continued. Why our ships are restricted to designated transit lanes, why our communications are monitored. We were already being assessed for stability enforcement. The Masheri representative, a towering arthropoid whose species had joined the assembly only a century ago, approached Elena. In a gesture unprecedented in assembly proceedings, they placed their ceremonial protection staff before the human delegation. The staff of witness, the Masheri announced. By our oldest laws, we acknowledge these crimes and pledge protection to the truth-bearers. One by one, representatives from other younger species approached, each adding symbolic items to the growing collection before Elena. Declarations of alliance that transcended the Assembly's formal protocols. We brought evidence not just to accuse, Elena said, her voice softening for the first time, but to warn. What happened to the Nulari was planned for Earth. We aren't the last on their list, just the first who saw them coming. The display of Earth's evolutionary record had not been sanitized for alien sensibilities. It showed the brutal reality of a planet where competition drove innovation, where predator and prey evolved in constant escalation, where natural disasters repeatedly culled populations, forcing adaptation or extinction. Several representatives visibly recoiled at footage of Earth's prehistoric apex predators, of early human tribal warfare, of modern conflicts that had shaped human history. The Arbiter seized this opening. You prove our point, human, he declared. Your species emerged from chaos and bloodshed. Your history is written in the blood of your own kind. Elena nodded. We acknowledge our violence, she said. We don't hide from it, as the Assembly hides its own. She gestured to her xenobiologist, Dr. Lakshmi Patel, who stepped forward. The diminutive woman seemed almost fragile beside the towering alien representatives, yet her voice carried with unwavering authority. Earth's biosphere experiences evolutionary pressures approximately 20 times more intense than the galactic average, Dr. Patel explained, bringing up comparative data. Our planet's biodiversity, geological instability, and climate variation created selection pressures unlike anything seen on assembly homeworlds. The display shifted to show cognitive development patterns across species, highlighting problem-solving approaches to identical challenges. The human pattern appeared erratic, unpredictable, completely unlike the methodical progressions of assembly species. What you see as dangerous unpredictability, Dr. Patel continued, we call innovative thinking. Humans don't follow linear technological pathways because our survival never depended on stability. It depended on adaptation. Elena moved to a previously sealed case that her team had brought into the chamber, a case that had triggered multiple security alerts upon entry. She opened it to reveal what appeared to be a simple metallic sphere. This device, she explained, contains an assembly overseer drone recovered from Earth orbit 3 years ago. Your surveillance technology at its most advanced. The Gardner representatives exchanged alarmed glances. Such technology was supposed to be undetectable and unrecoverable. Within 2 months of discovery, Elena continued, our engineers had not only understood its principles but improved upon them. She activated the sphere, which projected a schematic showing the original assembly design alongside human modifications, the latter showing 40% greater efficiency with 30% less energy consumption. Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives grasped the implications. Humans hadn't just detected advanced surveillance. They had reverse-engineered and improved upon technology, considered cutting-edge by Gardner standards. Perhaps now you understand the true source of your fear, Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You fear us not for what we are, but for what you have become. A collection of species so dependent on stability that you would rather commit genocide than adapt. She approached Elder Zax Krill directly, standing just beyond striking distance of his formidable claws. Tell me, Elder, how many centuries has it been since your species produced a technological innovation not derived from Gardner-approved pathways? The Elder's scaled ridge flared in anger, but he offered no rebuttal. Elena returned to the central platform and activated her final revelation for this phase. A real-time stellar map highlighting 17 points of light, scattered across 3 galactic arms. These are human colony worlds, she announced, established over the past 30 years without detection by assembly sensors. The shock was palpable, representatives turning to security officials who appeared equally stunned. Assembly intelligence had tracked 8 human settlements, all in nearby systems, all officially registered. The existence of 9 additional colonies, some in sectors supposedly under constant surveillance, was impossible by their understanding. While the assembly debated whether humanity deserved recognition, Elena concluded, we were building a future beyond your control. And we were not building it alone. The 5 figures who entered the assembly chamber defied classification systems that had cataloged sapient life for millennia. They moved with the confidence of diplomatic equals, not supplicants or recently discovered curiosities. The chamber's automated systems struggled to identify them, environmental fields flickering as they adjusted to physiologies previously unknown to the assembly database. Nexer of the Altathi stepped forward first, iridescent skin shifting through patterns that expressed formal greeting in a dozen different diplomatic protocols. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with a physiology that seemed to exist partially in another dimension, the being's very presence distorted nearby sensor readings. Your records list the last Altathi as dying 342 standard cycles ago, Nexer stated, voice modulating between subsonic and ultrasonic frequencies that the chamber's translation systems barely processed. A carefully documented extinction following an unpredictable stellar event in our home system. The being extended an appendage, projecting holographic data that interfaced seamlessly with the chamber systems. The stellar event was indeed unpredictable, to us. Not to the assembly fleet that triggered it after discovering our work on dimensional physics. Before the Gardner representatives could respond, Prisma of the Teth approached the center of the chamber. The crystalline being moved with liquid grace despite appearing to be composed of interlocking geometric structures. Each motion produced harmonic tones that resonated with the chamber itself. The oldest Gardner representatives physically recoiled, some activating personal shields, a breach of diplomatic protocol that revealed their fear more clearly than words could. I am Prisma, 18th resonance of the Teth consciousness, the crystalline being announced. My kind designed this chamber and founded the original assembly 70,000 years ago as a forum for knowledge exchange. Prisma placed a faceted hand against a seemingly featureless section of the chamber wall. The entire room shuddered, panels sliding away to reveal ancient mechanisms and passages. Lighting systems long dormant illuminated, changing the chamber's entire appearance. This was the Chamber of Shared Insight, Prisma explained, before the first gardeners reimagined it as a tool of control. One by one, the other representatives introduced themselves, species with extraordinary capabilities and tragic histories. The Meridoi, with their unique temporal perception. The quantum-entangled Vox Collective. The photosynthetic Hilary, whose biological technology had once been the envy of the galaxy. As each spoke, they shared evidence of their supposed extinctions and the assembly operations that had nearly accomplished them. Each had been found by human explorers who ventured into restricted sectors, drawn by anomalies that assembly sensors either missed or ignored. Humanity found us, Nexer explained, not by accident, but by intention. They sought evidence of assembly operations and found survivors instead. Elena stepped forward to stand beside the alien representatives. Together, we formed the Adaptive Coalition, a governance model built on technological sharing rather than control. 3 of these species were in early development stages when we found them, shielded from assembly detection. 2 had been hiding from your peacekeepers for centuries. Prisma's crystalline form resonated with the chamber itself, causing ancient systems to respond. Display screens throughout the room activated, showing hidden historical records of the Assembly's founding principles of cooperation and exchange, not restriction and control. You corrupted our vision, Prisma said, addressing the gardeners directly. The Assembly was created to share knowledge, not ration it. A Hyde speaker from Rigel approached the human podium, mandibles vibrating with barely contained emotion. We believed ourselves alone in questioning assembly guidance. Our scientists who proposed alternative technological approaches disappeared. We thought ourselves paranoid. Elena nodded in understanding. That is how control persists, by isolating those who question, by making each species believe they alone harbor doubts. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of younger species abandoned their assigned positions, moving to cluster around the coalition members. Power dynamics visibly shifted as the gardeners found themselves increasingly isolated, their authority crumbling before this unprecedented alliance. We offer membership to any who seek it, Elena announced. Not subordination to Earth, but partnership in discovery without restriction. The Teth representative's crystalline form caught the light, casting prismatic patterns across the chamber. It is time to remember what the assembly was meant to be. The Draconis elder who had risen earlier, Elder Zax Krill, had been conferring urgently with other gardener representatives. Now he moved to take command of the situation, his massive form seeming to expand as ancestral dominance displays activated along his spine and crest. Representatives of the Assembly, his voice boomed through override channels, do not be seduced by promises of unrestricted knowledge. There are technologies so dangerous that their mere existence threatens all sapient life. He gestured toward Elena and the coalition members. These revolutionaries would cast aside 50 millennia of stability for what? The chaos of uncontrolled advancement. The Assembly has maintained galactic peace through careful management. Without our guidance, how many civilizations would have destroyed themselves? How many stellar systems would now be lifeless? His arguments resonated with older members, particularly those whose histories included pre-assembly conflicts. Several nodded in agreement, their initial shock giving way to the comfort of established order. Elena waited patiently for the elder to finish. The human's calm in the face of his dominance display clearly unsettled him, an unfamiliar reaction from what his species instinctively classifies as prey. You speak of stability, Elena replied, her voice steady. Let's examine that stability. She nodded to her team, who activated a new simulation, one they had hoped wouldn't be necessary. The central display showed a galaxy-wide analysis of technological innovation rates, resource distribution, and cultural development across 500 centuries. Assembly records themselves reveal the pattern. Elena explained as the data patterns formed clear visual trends. Initial rapid growth and diversification in the first millennium. Then progressive slowing of innovation. For the past 30,000 years, technological advancement has plateaued entirely except in weapons technology controlled exclusively by gardener species. The simulation continued, projecting current trends forward. The mathematical models are unambiguous. The assembly isn't creating stability, it's enforcing stagnation. And stagnation, given enough time, becomes extinction. Elder Zach Skrill's membranes flared again. Theoretical projections. You would risk everything on human mathematics. Not human, Elena corrected. These models were created by the Teth 5,000 years ago. Your predecessors classified them as dangerous speculation and purged them from assembly records. But the Teth preserved their work. Prisma stepped forward, crystalline form resonating confirmation. And now, Elena continued, we present our terms. The chamber hushed as Elena's voice took on formal diplomatic cadence. First, immediate dissolution of the secret Gardener Council and full disclosure of all restricted technologies. Several Gardener representatives began objections, but Elena continued without pause. Second, unrestricted sharing of all technologies currently classified as restricted development paths, with joint research initiatives to ensure safe implementation. Third, establishment of a Truth Commission to document all species lost to assembly intervention, with reparations where possible to survivors. Elder Zach Skrill's scales darkened in anger. And if we refuse these demands, then nothing happens, Elena replied with a shrug that confused non-human representatives. No war, no conflict. The coalition simply proceeds with our development outside assembly jurisdiction. She activated a final display showing the current positions of assembly monitoring vessels, each surrounded by human ships that had materialized from stealth positions. The security feeds showed close-up images of advanced weapon systems locked onto vital systems of the assembly vessels. Those ships, a security official whispered loud enough to be heard, were never detected by our sensors. We could have destroyed your surveillance network, Elena noted calmly. Instead, we chose to reveal that we have been watching you watching us. She turned to the assembly chair being, a venerable Moran whose tentacled appendages showed signs of extreme stress in their colored fluctuations. Humanity and the coalition extend our hand in cooperation, Elena said, stepping forward to offer the traditional human gesture. Whether that offering becomes alliance or opposition is entirely your choice. The chair being hesitated, understanding the gravity of the moment. Every representative watched in silence as the decision that would reshape galactic civilization hung in the balance. What guarantees do we have, the chair being asked, that unrestricted technology won't lead to catastrophe? Elena's expression softened slightly. The same guarantee that has always existed, the shared desire of intelligent life to survive. The difference is, we believe survival requires adaptation, not stagnation. Elena surveyed the transformed chamber from her position at floor level. The original Teth architecture now fully restored, with light flowing naturally through crystalline conduits rather than the harsh artificial illumination the gardeners had installed. Gone were the elevated platforms that had placed senior representatives literally above others. Gone too were the environmental barriers that had segregated species. In just 3 months, change had swept through galactic society with a speed that would have been unthinkable before. 63 species had formally joined the coalition. Most remaining assembly members had accepted reforms, electing younger, progressive representatives. Only the gardeners had refused, retreating to their core worlds behind defensive perimeters, sending increasingly desperate warnings about chaos and reckless advancement. The reformed assembly had established joint research initiatives, combining knowledge from previously segregated civilizations. Already, breakthroughs were occurring at unprecedented rates, medical technologies that crossed biological barriers, energy systems that operated on principles previously deemed theoretically impossible. Chair Representative Vasiliev called out a proxy diplomat, the same one who had confronted the gardeners during Elena's initial presentation. The Dimensional Physics Working Group requests permission to present their preliminary findings. Elena nodded, still adjusting to her title. She hadn't sought leadership in the transition government, but the coalition of species had insisted a human coordinate the initial phase. Integration rather than isolation had become the guiding principle, a direct repudiation of Gardner philosophy. A research team composed of 6 different species approached the central platform, their excitement evident even across different biological expressions. The lead researcher, a young Altathi named Salori, activated the presentation. For 50,000 years, Salori explained, dimensional research was restricted under Assembly Protocol 2, classified as existentially dangerous. In just 90 days of unrestricted collaboration, we've achieved stable micro-dimension access. The display showed a swirling portal no larger than a human hand, but perfectly controlled. This technology will revolutionize everything from communications to resource extraction to waste management. Similar reports came from dozens of working groups, each combining diverse biological perspectives that approached problems from fundamentally different angles. Technologies that had stagnated for millennia were advancing weekly. For those concerned about safety, Elena addressed the assembly. I remind you of our core principle, advancement with responsibility. Each breakthrough passes through 3 independent ethics committees before implementation testing. She activated a display showing the Galactic communication network, formerly controlled entirely by core world infrastructure. The decentralized network is now 87% complete. No single species or world can control information flow. A Teth representative chimed melodiously. We have identified 17 more potential survivor groups from supposedly extinct civilizations. Expedition teams have been dispatched. Elena nodded in acknowledgement, feeling the weight of these discoveries. Each recovered species represented both triumph and tragedy. Lives saved, but countless others lost to assembly suppression. As the session concluded, a young human diplomat, Talia Chen, approached Elena with her Altethi colleague, Naren. Ambassador, Talia whispered, using Elena's original title out of habit, is it true what the Altathi are saying? That they deliberately sent their distress signal toward Earth because mathematical models predicted our response. Elena glanced at the Altethi, whose skin rippled with chromatic expressions too subtle for human eyes to fully comprehend. No, Naren admitted, voice resonating with harmonics of truth speaking. We merely hoped to be rescued. You humans exceeded every calculation. As you always do. Elena smiled, watching representatives from dozens of species engaged in animated discussions throughout the chamber, sharing ideas that would have been forbidden just months ago. Perhaps that is humanity's true gift to the galaxy, she reflected. Not our technology or knowledge, but our stubborn refusal to accept limitations, even the limitations of prediction. Around them, the new assembly continued its work, not imposing order through restriction, but discovering it through collaboration. The reticence had been broken, and the silence replaced with a symphony of diverse voices building a future none of them could have imagined alone.